Hi everyone, thank you very much for joining me in this session. 2022, a year in review for React Native. So in case you missed any of the amazing release we did last year, well, today I hope you will find out what you effectively missed. So initially I called this talk 22 because I thought I will show you 22 things you missed from 2022. But actually it turns out that we had so many things that we actually shipped. There are more than 22. And my time is actually really limited. So let's jump straight into the topic. But first, mandatory slide about myself. I work as an Android engineer in the React Native team. You can find me online as Corti Nico on Twitter and GitHub. And Corti.com is my website. I also run a podcast. It's called The Developers Bakery. We talk about open source there. So yeah, make sure you follow, subscribe, and ring the bell icon. Awesome. So it will be impossible to talk about 2022 and React Native if we will not mention about the new architecture. And I want to reiterate a couple of things here. Well, we introduced the new architecture in March 2022. And we introduced it as experimental. It still is experimental. If you go on the website, you will find a banner on top that tells you that the new architecture is experimental, and we're still sorting out details and bits. Your feedback in this process has been awesome. A lot of people, a lot of libraries starting adopting the new architecture, and we evolved this set of APIs so much. And today we're gonna see how. But yeah, to fully understand the bigger picture of the new architecture, we actually need to do one little step back. So if you were app.js or React Native EU, and you probably saw my talk about bringing the new architecture to the open source community. And I had this diagram there. The story of the new architecture starts at Facebook at the time in 2018. And it was thought that this would have been a 6-month project. Well, it didn't actually. Yeah, it took a little bit longer. It took sort of 3 years or so to do the full rollout of the new architecture within the Facebook app. And so, well, we would have been I don't know, fool to think that 1 year would have been enough to roll out the new architecture in the open source ecosystem. Especially because the open source ecosystem is so different and uses React Native in ways that are at times unpredictable. And so, yeah, last year we started with the rollout. And today I want to focus on this section. That's where we are now. Where are we, what we evolved, and yeah, what's available for us to use. So let's start. As I said, in March, we released 68. And yeah, that was quite of a milestone for us because this was the first version that contains, as I said, the new architecture as an opt-in. The new architecture actually was inside core since a while. I think 66 probably, but it was extremely complicated to use. In 68, we added a single, a one-liner that allowed you to try it out. So on Android, you will have a property called new arch enabled, which is defaulted to false, because as I said, still everything is experimental. We don't want to push you on top of you if you're not ready to try it. And on iOS, you will enable it with an environment variable before the pod install. With this single line, you will can try those new APIs and let us know if it works for you or not. So 68 went through. Yeah, there were some problems with the new architecture that we're gonna talk about now as we go through. But yeah, let's jump to June. In June, we released React Native 069. And yeah, I think the biggest feature here that we released is React 18. React 18 was released actually in March, but React Native takes a little bit of time to keep up with the React version. And React 18 was quite of a big one. So yeah, if you read a blog post for the React 18 release, you probably notice this, concurrent React. And the React team, we together have been working on those new set of APIs, which are introduces a lot of concurrency. And those APIs sits on top of the new architecture. So starting from 69, you can fully use React 18 and all those new APIs as long as you are on the new architecture. A couple of other quite big changes were shipped in 69, which are not necessarily new architecture related, but are worth calling out. The first one is bundled Hermes. So Hermes is our in-house JavaScript engine. And from 69, we are shipping a version of Hermes together with the framework built in a way that we know is 100% compatible. So like, for example, when you run one app, you will see like this, the new app project, you will see on top that the engine is a Hermes built for a given React Native version. Historically, like both Hermes and React Native have a lot of C++ code inside. And historically, there's been like a good, like a significant amount of incompatibilities between the two because they were compiled at different time. By bundling Hermes together with React Native, we can ensure that you will always have like a JavaScript engine that works well for you. This change allowed us to ship in 0.70, which was released in the fall, Hermes as default. This is quite of a significant change for us because now all the new React Native app will start with Hermes. You can still turn it off if it doesn't fit your needs, but like the Hermes team has been working super hard on fixing a lot of performance issues on Hermes, so you should really take a look at that. Specifically, the startup time, both on Android and on iOS, has been decreased. And you can see it in action on the Mattermost app, which is open source, and we use it as a reference. Like you can clearly see on the right as Hermes is like faster to load than JSC. There are also improvements on memory consumption of both Android and on iOS. And the thing to note here is that on iOS, you will actually pay like a cost on the IPA size of roughly 4 megabytes. But we believe that overall, it sort of outweighs the benefits that, that Hermes brings on. 0.70 introduced also a couple of updates on the modern languages side of things. Specifically, there are some updates on Kotlin, which is the preferred language for Android application. Earlier, last year, I was mentioning how we were looking into upgrading the website. And now I'm happy to share that the React Native.dev website is updated to be fully bilingual. So every snippets of code of native code for Android is available both in Java and Kotlin. And join me in appreciating how smaller the Kotlin code is and easier to maintain and just nicer. And I can actually share that there is like more to come in the future for Kotlin, which is lined up actually for 0.73. I will not spoil it. I will leave it to you to search inside the commit that already landed on main. But yeah, we're fully invested on Kotlin support, and we're glad that we made steps in this direction. Talking about modern languages allows me to jump through to the next release, which is 0.71. And here I'm sort of like, well, faking, because I said that I will talk only about 2022, but actually 0.71 was released at the beginning of 2023. But a lot of the work that made this release possible happened last year. So please let me talk about how 0.71 has a lot of support for TypeScript. This is the first version that makes a change in how the new app template is built. So whenever you create a new application now, that application will be written in TypeScript. So you will see this app.tsx file instead of app.jsx. So this is quite a big deal. Like previously, you could already use TypeScript, but you will have to rely on external templates. And most importantly, the TypeScript types for React Native were not hosted inside our repository. They were living inside definitely typed. That is sort of like a little bit of a friction because like when contributors, both meta engineers or external contributors are making changes to our JavaScript APIs, they don't think about the fact that the TypeScript APIs are living in another website with another rollout workflow and so on. So now we also bring the types within React Native, which is great and will make for better types experience for all of us. Also, the website has been updated to be bilingual, so you will find most of the examples in both TypeScript and JavaScript. 71 brings also, quite a lot of quite significant updates. For example, a huge set of web-inspired props. For example, let's look at this component, my image, which does nothing other than wrapping an image. And if we would like to render the fancy new React.dev logo, we will just, like historically, you will use the source prop, which wants an object, and you will have to specify URI, which if you're coming from the web world, that's not great. Like ideally, you would like to do something like that, SRC. So like there's been a lot of initiatives in sort of adding new properties to React Native core components, which mirrors the one that you would expect on web. For example, a huge variety of properties which are like related to accessibility, like all the ARI properties. The image, both the image and the text input component have a lot of new properties as well that you can find documented on the website, and just make the experience for web developers that are coming to React Native easier. And also for you, they're going from React Native to web, also easier. Another quite big change is Flexbox Gap. And this reminds me that I should not fix the slides 2 minutes before the talk, as I forgot a bit. But yeah, so what is Flexbox Gap? Let's say that you want to create sort of a complex layout like this one. So you want to place some object, and you want to sort of add spacing of, let's say, I don't know, 12 pixels all around everything. Well, this is like, it sounds easy, but actually is not. Especially because you will have to do crazy magic with non-uniform margins. Like if you start adding 10 pixel margin on the first box, yeah, you will have to sort of recalculate all the others, which is really terrible. Well, on web, you can use new properties, which are like gap, row gap, and column gap, which now are available also on React Native. And here, this allows me to call out that this is possible because we took a closer look at Yoga, our layout engine, which has been sort of neglected for a bit, I have to mention. Like it was in maintenance mode, but we sort of had a lot of pending features like this one. They were like awaiting to be merged. And yeah, we took like a closer look at it, and now they're available for us to use. And effectively, what I was talking about, this gap just allows you to specify like, I want a gap of 12 pixels between my item, and the layouting will just be way easier for you also to maintain. Yeah, then I mentioned like I will talk about the new architecture, and those things for 0.71 being TypeScript, Flexbox Gap, and the web-inspired props are not new architecture related. Those are for everyone. But there are some changes which are new architecture related, and let me add the experimental banner because those are, well, things I personally worked on. So yeah, we need a little bit to talk about it. The first one is build speed. When I was talking about the new architecture that was released in 0.68, well, we received some concerns. People told us like, this doesn't really work. Like, I can't envision myself working with this. For example, build speed. Like, if we were to compare how an Android new architecture build will run between 0.70 and 0.71, well, like a clean build will take 10 minutes and 12 seconds on 0.70 on a M1 Max, which is quite of a beefy machine. We had users on the issue tracker reporting that they had like a MacBook Air, and their build were like taking more than 1 hour and never finishing, which I can understand. So yeah, that was really like, it's experimental for a reason. So React Native 0.71 brings this down so much. Like it's a cross-architecture build is 32 seconds. And it's so fast that it actually allows me to run a build in a slide and let it run because it will be so fast that it will finish before I finish to present the slides. And the thing is, well, we basically moved from build from source to shipping pre-builds. And this is all the catch. And that's how you can actually go from 10 seconds to 32 or 16 seconds here, as I was doing like a single architecture build. So yeah, when we were shipping the new architecture at first, we tried the simplest approach, which for us was a build from source. We knew that shipping pre-builds would have been like potentially the best solution, but it required a lot of rework of the internals. And we were just not ready at 68 to give you that fast experience. So we just gave out this new architecture, experimental with those APIs, and the people could try, but you will have to pay a little bit of a build cost. With 71, this is fully fixed. And this also brings a couple of niceties that I want to talk about. The first one is benefits on disk space. So if you were to turn the new architecture on Android project and on React Native 0.70 and do a build, you will see that your project will occupy, yeah, it will be quite fat. It's like 12 gigabytes. Not great, especially if you have multiple projects that are like on separate folders. Really not great. I mean, obviously you're building native, so you have like a lot of binary files. But how do we trim this? So I'm happy to share that React Native 71 reduces disk space to 1 gigabyte per project. That's like, imagine there you have like a full node modules with all the intermediates as well. What's the catch here? The catch is like with pre-builds, we are now able to ship Android artifacts and they will be downloaded and cached once per machine. So they will be cached locally in the sense that if you create a project on React Native 71 once, you download it the first time. And then if you create another project, you will be reusing the same React Native SDK that you downloaded once. You don't need to re-download it. That saves a lot of space and reduces also the amount of the binaries because we're not doing a build from source at all. Another quite nice change that we did was a lot of cleanup in the new app template that a lot of people uses to build on top of. And well, like this is a diff of how the template changed between 0.70 and 0.71. And as you can imagine, red is good. And here I still have the experimental banner because this is like the new architecture sort of pushed it through, but in the reality, everyone is benefiting from it. Like cleaning the template is good for everyone because we remove stuff that are unnecessary. Like removing code is nice, less code to maintain. Specifically, we removed all the C++ and CMake code from user space. So things like in your project, you will not have those CMake lists or main application turbo module manager delegate.cpp. Because we just believe that those files, like, well, you might need them for more advanced use cases. Like you might need them if you are doing like C++ only turbo modules or other stuff. But the average user doesn't need them. So we don't need to create those files for everyone. Let's just remove them all and sort of clean up the old setup. Similarly, on iOS, you will see RCT up delegate, which is like a similar mechanism to encapsulate a lot of the logic away from the template. And the end goal of this is that like updates are easier because if the code that you have in your folder is smaller, the things that can break are less. So 0.71 also brings a lot of update and bumps of things. Like, and here I want to use this slide to sort of like, yeah, I think this sort of hits the point of what React Native is. It effectively like sits in between so many frameworks and tools that we basically act as an orchestrator. And especially if you are like a contributor or a maintainer or you do releases or so, you know the pain of bumping one of these tools and you know what it means for end users. Like for example, for Ruby, we had so much struggle because folks were like not understanding how the Ruby setup worked and so on. We try to keep up with those versions. And we also try to encapsulate them as much as possible so that they are not exposed to the complexities that those tool forces on you. So still on 71, yeah, I mentioned that, like I want to talk also a little bit about our community changed and evolved in a bit. Because in 71, like just before 71, we had the opportunity to add our first post-pandemic core contributor summit. And this is great because we were like in Wrocław meeting in person. And we had the opportunity to speak with maintainers of libraries or contributors of React Native as a whole. And from those 2 days, a lot of initiatives and projects started. We actually landed on main, which is like, it's so great. Like, I am always like excited when I see how much the community is involved in this project and how much the community can sort of give an input to how and steer how this project behaves. And like from this core contributor summit, we actually had I think 2 or potentially 3 RFCs. And here I want to call out our RFC process that lives inside the discussion and proposal repo. If you look at the history, I think like between 2020 and 2021, we haven't had that many RFCs, but in 2022, we had so many. And I think that the coolest part is how actually we add RFCs which are not coming from Meta. Like I want to call out this one from Lorenzo, which is here with us today. And this is like this one, RFC 480, React Native as a monorepo. Trust me, is a big deal. Like users will not notice this, but in a sense, the real problem of React Native is that the project is structured in a sense that was structured in a sense that the root folder contains the Yarn monorepo and also contains the React Native package we publish. So before we publish, we need to sort of clean up the package.json in a really hacky way, and it makes it really hard to create new packages and so on. And it was great to see like people that are not working at Meta or not necessarily like working within the React team pushing through this effort, which now is purple because it's merged. And this allows me to sneak peek into what's coming next for 0.72, which will be unfair if I were to leave this stage without like leaving you a couple of nuggets what's to see in the next version. And the first one is, again, the monorepo. And yeah, the whole deal here is about moving a lot of stuff that was inside the root of React Native inside this magic folder, which is packages/React Native. And I have like a proper package. And well, again, this, it sounds like a MV command will do the job. It's not, especially because of our internal infrastructure will work. And the hope that 0.72 will be completely transparent to you is actually, well, if that will be extremely transparent to you, that means that our monorepo migration went well. And here I want to give kudos to Ruslan, which is also with us, which drove these sort of massive diffs, which I could not copy completely on our, because Keynote doesn't really like a lot of characters, but trust me, is huge, and it took him quite some time, and I'm glad that now we're like in a proper monorepo and we're able to like evolve and develop faster. A couple of other things that are like also about to be released in 0.72 are changes on our bundler, Metro. And well, I have Alex from the Metro team here with us today, which can be like stopped after to talk about a new feature, which is package exports, which, yeah, by the way, if you see, can be configured on your metro config.js file and as this unstable prefix. We are starting to use these sort of unstable prefixes because we are committed to sort of generally delivering a more stable API. And we realized that in the past we released stuff without properly explaining what is experimental and what is not. And we don't want people to jump on things that we know we're going to change or we might have to change. So to sort of protect ourselves, you will see more of those unstable underscore blah, blah, blah. And you're free to use them. Like, people worked on that, and they're probably really stable. But till we have that unstable prefix, things might change. And, well, another thing that's coming for Metro is this unstable enabled symlinks, which, well, it sort of speaks by itself. It fixes issue number 1 of Metro, which was open in 2017 and has been there since a while. So symlink supports for Metro is coming, and well, we're hoping to collect your feedback. One of the last changes that we're going to have in 72 is new architecture interop. And this is really related to new architecture itself. So if you have been trying the new architecture on Android and on iOS, you will see that if you try to add the library and the library is not migrated, it will look like that. Yeah, a red square that tells you, well, my legacy native view is not Fabric compatible yet. This is quite of a bummer because people have to sort of migrate all of their libraries. Like, you need to have all of your libraries migrated to have a fully working app. And we have sort of a solution for this. So now in your React Native config, you can specify this field called unstable React legacy component names. This is also unstable. And you can specify the components that you want to register for the new architecture interop layer. And we're going to do some crazy magic under the hood. But we will manage to render your non-migrated components in the new architecture. This is experimental. We're looking for feedback. It might be broken in 73. Or we might like just remove it. But yeah, please try it and let us know. And this also works on iOS. We have been also working on fixing a lot of use cases like events and constants, commands, and so on that we wanted to backport to Fabric. And well, we hope that sort of gets you try the new architecture with like less friction. And now I want to wrap up. So we were talking about the history of the new architecture, and which I clearly believe is sort of like interconnected with the story of React Native. And well, I can't tell what the future will bring at this stage, but I really we are so committed to deliver like a more stable API and a more stable experience. And trust me, the future is brighter. Like during this year, we did so much effort to improve developer experience, stability, upgrade story, and we're going to continue on this commitment. And I want to wrap up on this slide, which, as I said, is sort of like the TLDR of, at least for me, React Native. And it's painful. Like, we know it's painful, especially if you start adding stuff like crashes, ANR, C++ code, and unmaintained third-party packages, and version upgrades, and a lot of stuff. And yeah, I remember there was this meme on Reddit with like, how do you spend your time as a React Native engineer? It was like 99% of the time, like Gradle, Cocopouts, whatever. And then I actually write code 1%. We really, trust me, we are fully committed to sort of encapsulate this complexity away from you and deliver what we call a stable React Native experience. And with this, I want to thank you very much for listening, and contribs are welcome.
So yeah, I opened up a feature request on the Hermes repo, I think 3 weeks ago, for local evaluators so that we get secure ECMAScript support. So yeah, what's the best way to speak with the Hermes team and get that through the door?
You open a pull request against which repo?
Oh, issue Hermes. Yeah, so I know. I don't think there's anyone here from Hermes, right? But
Hermes. So the Hermes team has like way less traffic than React Native, so they're generally quite fast to respond. But if you haven't got any response at all, if it went radio silence, just send me the PR. Like if you tell me the PR number, I can ping it through and make just even check where it got lost, because yeah, we have. I mean, they have less traffic than us, but you know, those are end of the day, they're like emails and notifications, and people can just like miss them. But yeah, the Hermes team is quite responsive and also welcoming external contributions.
Yeah, it's a feature request, so I think it might take a bit longer. Yeah.
Okay, it's a feature request, not a pull request.
Yeah, sure. One more. I've got a pull request for TypeScript 5. CI is passing now, so do you think that over a couple of beers tonight we can get that?
Yeah, sure. Let me merge it now.
Contribs are welcome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is Facebook now using React Native for the app?
Sorry?
For the app, for the Facebook app?
Yes. So there are like, I think the last time I checked, there were more than 1,000 surfaces on the Facebook app that were like using React Native. Yeah, like for example, Marketplace is all in React Native. But there are also, like, if you go on the reactnative.dev/showcase, you will find a list of all the apps we use. For example, the Oculus app is all in React Native. And then we have like the Ads Manager is all in React Native. And yeah, a lot of also our VR like explorations are in React Native as well. Yeah.
I saw in the presentation that there was more focus on Android than iOS.
Yes.
Is that a reason behind that?
Because I'm an Android engineer.
Oh, just that. Okay.
No, I mean, yeah, sort of. I love to present what my team worked on, but at the same time, I wanted to sort of like spend a little bit of time on things that I'm extremely passionate about. And I have to mention that I am, like, I always joke that I'm a build engineer. I don't know what happens at runtime. Like, don't ask me what is a React hook or stuff like that. No, but yeah, jokes aside, I personally really like Android, and also, for example, on the build speed and the disk usage, the regression for the new architecture on Android was way higher than on iOS because of how the old architecture uses pre-builds on Android. And so if you were to compare the old architecture and the new architecture on Android, you will see that, I don't know, 30 seconds versus 10 minutes, people will just throw away the 10 minutes thing. While on iOS, the performance cost was a little bit less. But Ricardo, which is here in the front row and is our iOS engineer, he can talk about it.
Yeah, thank you.
Very random. I presume that the internals of the Kotlin stuff that you're implementing is probably using view bindings. Any plans to integrate with Jetpack Compose?
No, it's not using view bindings. That's the first thing. It uses old school Android views. And so yeah, integrating with Jetpack Compose. There is a pull request, I think a branch probably, on our discussion and proposal. There was some explorations in the past to sort of see how that is possible. And the TLDR is, yes, it's possible. We are just not directly investing on it at the moment. Personally, I will be a little bit more concerned on the iOS side of things. I think Apple will be faster than Google at pulling the plug on UIKit. Ricardo has opinion on this, so you should ask him. I think the Android view system is going to be supported for 3+ years at least. Yeah, and I don't know, and Google historically is known for supporting things longer. So yeah, we are looking into it. Obviously, Jetpack Compose also, yeah, has a lot of implication on how Kotlin is used and so on. So yeah, there are a lot of things to consider. But yeah, it's on the table, but not actively working on, I would say.
Sorry, it's a Hermes is a JavaScript engine. Then, so can you say we use the same JavaScript engine when we deploy to iOS and also for Android?
Yes.
I mean, yeah, the reason I'm asking was just a couple of days ago, I was using the React Native community data picker, and so it passed the UTC date time, and because now we're in the summertime, so when people choose today's date, actually the yesterday date, 11 o'clock p.m. is returned. So I was converting to a UK local date time, and then it worked on iOS, but that errored on Android. So
okay,
I had to use the platform.os is Android.
Yeah, I can talk about it. Yes, so you will be using the same engine, obviously, but some of the APIs of the engine are implemented with platform-specific API, which might diverge. And the bug that you mentioned, actually, I think I saw it the other day. It's something that the Hermes team needs to pick up. So again, if you give me the number, I can sort of bump it. But yeah, some of the implementation relies on how the platform behaves. For example, the whole internationalization support was developed first on Android and then on iOS, and then are using the same engine. Yes, but some of the API works on Android and not on iOS. So obviously there are some discrepancies on how things are implemented. There might be. We are looking into sort of reducing them as much as possible. And user feedback is important exactly to understand those. Yeah.